I
We're
think we're
live.
live.
That's what it says.
So usually we have someone else helping with the music. So usually we have some music, some intro. So we don't have some music right now, but I can just like tat da 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 da. That's me trying to be musical right here. So hello and welcome to the Late Night Design Show. And tonight's guests are Claire Liu, CEO of Know Your Company, Sarah Quenle. Am I saying it's right, Sarah?
That sounds great. I like that better than the pronunciation of the name. Let's go with it.
Okay. Sarah Quenle, Head of Product at Drivel, and Cap Watkins, Leadership and Consulting at Practical Works. Tonight's topic, this is super awkward without music, by the way. It's going to be design leadership. And just a reminder for everyone that is watching right now, just say hi for everyone that is in the chat. Just say where are you from, where are you watching from, and add any questions. Later in the program, we're gonna be able to answer some of those questions. So just like ask them there. So that's it. Let's get started, and let me stop sharing here. And there you go. We're here. How are we doing?
Hello.
Hello.
Amazing. Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. First of all, where are you at? Tell us where are you at, Kat?
So I am currently visiting my parents in Louisiana for the week. So I like come home. This is where I come home to. But I'm usually from New York. But I'm right now up in my parents' attic.
What time?
Like a good
around
son.
what time is it over there?
It's about 9 p.m. Everyone else is in bed. Like everyone else has school tomorrow and work. Like this is like,
Hold on.
I'm
Are
just
you
up here
right now
doing this.
in your old room? Is this like your when you were a kid?
No. My parents have moved since then. I don't even
Okay.
know. Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Claire? Where are you at?
I am calling from Tokyo, and I am calling from the future. So it is Monday morning, about 11 a.m. Hence the sunlight that is coming through the window right now. But when I'm not in Asia, I'm in San Francisco. So I'm here for a month or two, just hanging out, working, and just wanting to spend some time in this beautiful country.
That is great. And you are right. You have this beautiful light just like shining on you. Very flattering. What about you, Sarah? Where are you at?
I am in southeastern Connecticut in a little tourist town called Mystic in my home office.
Oh, that's true because Drivel is all remote, right?
That's right. Yep.
That's so cool. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, but that little doll in the back, that's from those comics, right? Where the one that says like everything is okay or everything is fine.
It's fine.
This is fine. That's what it says. You've seen this, right?
It's a
Okay.
reminder that everything is okay.
Yeah, this is fine. Just exactly like this show right now. It's just like, yeah, this is fine. Everything's on fire right now. So we have a lot of people. We have people from Egypt, from Mexico, Colombia, Fremont, Berkeley. Damn. Thank you so much for everyone that is visiting here. Just a reminder, because we're live, by the way. This is all live. It's so crazy, right? Technology allows us to do all of this stuff. We can be TV stars or with our own TV show. So just wanted to just reminder, please ask questions there and we'll be able to just like go back to those questions. And today we have this subject about design leadership because I see you as design leaders, Cap, Claire, Sarah, someone that is like the community looks up to, and you're also just creating awesome stuff. And I don't know. I think I have a lot of questions about it. What does it mean to be a leader? And I one of the first things that I'm kind of going through this process, and I'm asking this question like selfishly, just to for myself, not really for the audience, but I wonder if there's a lot of designers go from this I don't know, from this path, from going from IC, like individual contributor, to from those roles to manager. And sometimes because in different companies, like that's the way to go up a level. That's in some companies, that's the structure, that's the only way to actually just like get a better position, or like a I don't know, even a better pay. So that's usually just like the usual next step. But sometimes they don't really like it, and sometimes they go back to being an IC, or they quit and they become freelancers. But sometimes it all works out. So my question to you is, what are those things about becoming like manager, like going from IC, becoming a manager, and why would it not work for people? What are the things that one should look out for? What are those things that and by the way, is it for everyone? Like, is this, can anyone do this? I mean, I'm pretty sure that anyone, but I don't know. What have you seen out there? Yeah, I don't know. Like you, Claire, you tell us.
Yeah, totally. I get this question a lot, or it's a question that I talk to so many CEOs about, because a lot of managers actually find themselves in the position almost accidentally. It's the fact that, hey, I was actually an amazing, great work, and people were really inspired by the work that I'm doing, and so now I got promoted, but now I'm actually not even doing any design. Like, I'm not even doing the thing that I used to. I don't even know if I like anymore even what I'm doing. And so it's for anyone who's feeling that situation. Good news is you're not alone. Good news is that it happens. What's slightly terrifying, however, is Gallup actually did a big survey recently, and I'll find it and you can share it in the show notes, Pablo, about how the majority of companies actually choose and promote managers incorrectly. So I think it's a crazy statistic. It's like more of companies actually choose managers incorrectly, which is that they're choosing managers based on individual contribution and performance, the actual skills that are necessary to quote unquote manage people. And so we'll talk about what those things are in a second. But I guess the first point I want to make is that actually most don't know, first and foremost, what the qualities are for what makes a good manager. So oftentimes you are picked, no offense, for the wrong reasons. And that happens most of the times in most companies. In terms of what actually makes the biggest difference of when you're going to be successful in an individual contributor role versus in a manager role, is a shift in focus around really one thing, which is your definition of success. That is, when you're an individual contributor, your definition of success is pretty clear. You need to execute on certain design projects. They need to be on time. They need to be of a certain quality. They need to serve the client in a certain way. That definition of success is very clear, and it's on a project level, right? When you become a manager, the definition of success changes. It's not about particular design is that entire team able to meet the overall goals that you're looking to meet? Is the entire company able to meet the entire goals that the company wants to meet? And a lot of times success is no longer about typeface. It's no longer about color or palette or sensibility. It's about revenue. It's about retention. It's about customer referrals, right? So it's about things that, as a manager now, things that you didn't have finding success have now changed. And so for folks who find themselves in this position, I think the hardest thing to grasp and to ask yourself is just, what do you most enjoy thinking about and spending time in terms of what that definition of success is? Do you find more joy in actually success being sort of a beautiful output in what you're designing or making a customer happy? Or is it actually maybe the team and the organization as a whole succeeding? And so just really, I think, narrowing in on that definition of success is in my opinion, the individual contributor and a manager, and feeling good in either role.
Yeah. The thing is that, I mean, you even mentioned it where it's like you're landing there by accident. The thing is that sometimes it's not even up to you, because like probably what you want, success means, well, I want a better pay. And the company is not really structured to for you to still like, you know what? No, I still feel like my definition of success is still caring about typography, still caring about the colors, but there's that's the level I'm ever going to like succeed. That's at least in this company, this structure. So then it's not really up to the person, but it's also up to the company to have those paths right open for the people that are like probably still be leaders, but in a different way that is not managing people.
Absolutely, and I think I think that's a great point. I think. So my take on it is I believe you always have a choice, right? So even though the company might not formally have a path of progression of, hey, I want to stay designing stuff, but I don't want to manage people, but I want to continue to get paid more, and I want my title to be different, and I want to be taking on bigger projects and be challenged, right? So that path of progression might not exist in a company, but that's something that absolutely you have a right to vocalize, right? And in terms of being successful in vocalizing that and the company actually wanting to help you accomplish that, it's a whole. But I do think it's important, especially around design leadership, to ask this question of what do I actually enjoy making success in an actual organization? And when you can ask that question and answer it clearly for yourself, then the paths become, I think, a little clearer, but I for all of us and myself included, I'm not a designer by trade, but I think a lot of, sort of writing is my craft, right? Do I enjoy, is success for me just writing a bunch of stuff, or success actually the organization moving forward? And for me, that answer is the latter. And I think, just asking that question can hopefully bring people some clarity.
What do you think, Cap? What are your opinions?
I was writing things down. Luckily, I have a pen. I largely agree. I think it's about enjoyment, but also something I've been thinking a lot about lately is like sphere of accountability and like how much you actually want. Because I feel like that's a thing that I see like a lot of managers, and particular managers that like progress through management, get wrong. Is like, you've heard of the Peter principle, where like someone gets promoted to a level that they're no longer effective, and that's like where they're stuck forever, but they're not effective, and so everyone hates them. And that's a bad time. I think part of that's because people aren't thinking about like what they want to be accountable for, right? So like if I look back, and again, survivor bias like all over the place, but looking back, like, and it's become more conscious in the last couple of steps I've taken in my career, is like I wanted to be responsible for how designers work together. So I became a manager. And then I wanted to be responsible for how all the designers work together. So I managed an entire design team, right? It's like, it kind of like, if I hadn't wanted that, if I just wanted the title or like to just progress in my career, I would have found myself maybe not good at those things. Do you know what I mean? Or ineffective. I also think that it doesn't just apply to managers. I think it applies to senior ICs. I think like senior ICs also don't think about this, where you want to move from even mid-level to senior, or senior to whatever the next step is. Like in my case, like companies I've been at, it's staff designer is like the next level, and then there's like principal designer. But those aren't just about projects. Like actually at most companies that I've worked at or known of or heard of, like those roles come with mentorship, like responsibilities, less design time, and more just like making sure the other designers like are able to execute well. And you're not managing them, like you don't have one-on-ones, you're not doing their salary, you're not like dealing with performance reviews, like, but you are responsible for the craft overall. And again, a lot of designers get into a position where like they're like, oh, my company supports this path, I want to go up this path. And then they get themselves into a position where like they're underperforming at a level, right? Because they don't want the accountability. Like they didn't actually want that. They wanted to just do their project and like stick in that zone, which is like a different thing. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question. All that's what a lot of people get wrong. And then a lot of companies, like Claire said, totally just screw this up in the first place. I think like I've been at places where managers were being managed by first-time managers, which is not good. It's a very bad situation for everyone. And they're also like most companies don't have support structures for managers. Like HR might have some L&D thing they do, but the company in general like doesn't support them the way that like we have design critiques for designers. We have like entire team meetings with engineers and product people to discuss our designs. Like what managers are talking about what they're doing, like at work together, like and getting support to get better at it, you know? I just don't think that exists like very many places.
They go to the bar and have a meeting with themselves.
By themselves.
Yes. Sarah, right now you are the head of product at Dribbble, which sounds like a very like serious job. But I see like on your free time, you keep like, I see all the illustrations you create that you post on Dribbble, you post on Twitter, and you even like challenge yourself to like keep creating and just like every day a new illustration. By the way, I'm amazed at like how you have time to do all that stuff, which is great, very inspiring. Do you see this as something that you need to have in your life, like have that creative outlet, or what is it? It sounds like it's a side project for you, and I just wanted to know if that's important to you, and like why are those kind of things like important for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, side projects are super important to me. I usually have several in the works at any time. And I mean, at the heart of it, I got into tech in the early days of the web because I love to make things. And I've been that way since I was a little kid. And it really, I think it ties into management for me, and that I like to think of myself a lot of times as an accidental manager. I tried out a lot of different types of jobs. I'd worked as a designer and as an engineer, and ended up one day getting promoted and was suddenly managing people. And my day wasn't spent building things anymore. And so side projects became that outlet where I could still feel creative and make the things that were popping into my head. So I try to carve out as much time as I can when I'm not working to be able to do that. And for me, especially working at Dribbble and being involved with the design community, it's a great way for me to still feel like an active part of the community, not just someone in a support role, and to have those relationships with other designers and illustrators at a level of an actual maker.
Got it. Yeah, and I think it's if you are a maker, that you are in that position where you still care, like you made that decision consciously, like Claire and Cap are saying, where it's like, yeah, I do care about the success of other designers of the company, that this is what I want, but I still want to make stuff, and it's probably not going to be at work, but then having those kind of side projects, just like I feel like can give you that like sense of freedom, or like that, like I was picturing like an escape from the corporate world. But yeah, and I want to get into like even deeper stuff, and I wonder if there's any like emotional like challenges that come with being a manager, like from that transition where like even Claire, you were mentioning, where it's like the cares that you had as an IC are totally different once you become a manager, right? Or you're not talking about typography anymore. You're talking about the business goals and retention and all this kind of stuff. Like, is that transition, like, is there some challenges, emotional challenges, like going through that transition? Like, what should designers be like prepared for those kind of things where you have to adapt to a new culture and new languages?
Absolutely. Leadership is hard as shit. I mean, I hope I can swear on this. YouTube,
yeah, please,
because we're live. And then I just say that, and I just looked up the Gallup study while you were talking that I was alluding to earlier. What's fascinating is like very, very few people are naturally good at it, right? So what Gallup did is they, and again, I'll send this out to you, Pablo, the link. What they did is they identified like 5 to 8 managers have in common, right? Around decision making, around setting a vision, around helping people make progress. And in terms of people's natural ability to be good they found that only 10% of people actually possess the natural ability. It doesn't mean you can never be a great leader. It just means if to be naturally good at this are just sort of coming out of the gate swinging, making sure people are on the same page, people are feeling good about stuff. So 90% of the time you're going to suck at it really, really bad, maybe for a really long time. You actually might never be good at it. And so that's the other part of, I think that what makes leadership so hard is that it's actually something that you're not good at naturally. Like first of all, just to take a step back, right? So if as humans, our personal definition of success is self-preservation. To become a leader is all of a sudden, it's not thinking about what's in the best interest of the team. And so that shift, just even on a fundamental human level, is really sort of wrecks everything, right? So you have the fact that it's hard, you're not very good at it to begin with. And then here's the third, and I think the thing that I try to say is, how do you actually get good at it? How do you get good at it? And, Cap, you alluded to this, is that so many companies don't have learning. And, it's why you started your consulting practice, I'm sure, too. It's like not a lot of companies have effective practices for actually helping managers become better. And a big part of that is when you think about what it takes to become good at something, it takes practice. And when in life, do you practice actually leadership, where it's a low stakes environment where you can make mistakes? You can't. Basketball, you can go shoot hoops, at a corner by yourself. No one's watching. It doesn't matter. When it comes to game time, you're better. If you're a track star, you can go hit the, and improve that way. But when you're a manager, you can't just like find someone and be like, okay, can you pretend to be someone who I'm working with? Like, how do you practice management? So it's this thing that you can't practice. You're not naturally good at. There's no support for actually how to get there. And on top of that, you're not even sure if you like. That's the other part too. I mean, there's one thing of liking that definition of success. It's a whole other thing to actually enjoy having tough conversations, bringing up difficult feedback, right? Setting deadline, all of that. So I think the people have to go through to sort of circle back and really answer your question, Pablo, is being okay with maybe not being good at it and it being really good at it.
Got it.
Yeah, and I think like the other thing I was thinking about while Claire was talking about that is like I think it kind of comes down to like all these, we treat all these IC things and things like sports or like all these things you can get good at are very tangible, like as craft. Like we talk about craft all the time, and no one treats, like no company or very few companies out there like treat management as a craft that needs to be like nurtured. Like most companies don't care, right? Like the craft is like the managers are there to enable the craft and management's just whatever. Like there's no craft to it, but that's not true. Like I think that's like, it's so false. And then for design managers, like to get to the original question too, is one of the hardest emotional things I see design managers go through is allowing design to ship that is not design that they would have done themselves. Like there is this, I feel like I keep asking this question to people, which is, do you not like this because it's bad and doesn't achieve the goals, or do you not like it because it's not your design? Like it wasn't your choice. Like, does it solve the user problem? Does it like just not, is that type just not the way you would have said it? Like, is that the problem? Because that's hard. I think like allowing that transition is the hardest I see for design managers mostly, is like that transition from like total art control almost to like, this is okay. And I'm going to trust these people to have to taste and let them develop this thing on their own is like very, very difficult. For sure. And then the other thing, kind of going back to something Claire said too, is like getting better at it's hard and you don't know how, but then also that makes it really easy. Like I think most managers are good at a part of management, like one part or two parts. Like you have like things that you like spike up in and like things you're not as good at. But when you're new and you don't have the support structure and you're not getting feedback, like I see a lot of managers get stuck doing the thing they're good at. And like it's easy to ignore the other parts. And when I see failed teams or like teams that are struggling, it's because like their manager is really great at setting direction, but not great when it comes to like giving feedback to their team or helping other departments collaborate with them. And they just kind of ignore those things. And so like things are bad. And I think that's another thing that like, it kind of gets back to the craft of management is like, it is a large skill set, a very broad skill set that like, I think a lot of managers like kind of get stuck in a zone, you know, and that's the same thing with art direction, like design managers who just art direct, like they get stuck there and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think certainly for me and for some of my peers who are also managers, I think those of us who didn't plan that as their path, but decide to invest in it and want to grow and learn, it takes, because so many companies are not invested in that process, it's a lot of your personal development time that's spent getting better, whether it's reading books or talking to other managers at the bar, which sounds great, Pablo. If you know that bar, I want to go there to talk management. But like, you really have to seek out those resources on your own. And so like, you really have to be very personally invested in figuring out what management is and then how to get better at it. And I agree. I think something that Claire talked about that really resonated for me was on the emotional side, as a first-time manager, learning how to have those difficult conversations with people was maybe the thing that scared me the most about becoming a manager. I don't think anyone likes conflict. And sometimes you have to you're dealing with conflict or trying to resolve conflict. And so, you know, learning how to have those conversations when all you want to do is just run in the other direction is so difficult. And I think those are the things. It's like, am I doing a better job at this? How do I get better at it? And where is that feedback loop to help me when I've had those conversations? It's definitely a challenging thing.
Well, and here's the crazy thing. Like when as a manager of managers, I started managing managers for the first time like a few years ago. And the craziest thing to me was just like what was I going to say about this? The kind of disconnect where like, so if you're a junior designer, right, you have a lot of room to like fail. Like, what are the consequences of a junior designer like messing up a design? Like basically zero, right? Like they'll get feedback, someone will see it, they'll change it. The internet's easy to change. Like, it's just like the consequences are so low. First time manager, consequences are high. Like risk is extremely high, right? Like, okay, now I have 3 reports and I have 3 people that I'm managing. And if I mess that up, one of them quits and now what, right? Or like 2 of them are like ticked off for not getting the support they need or whatever. Like there's so much risk involved with like, and I have never actually figured out how to really buffer, and maybe Claire or like Sarah have a suggestion about this, but how to buffer first time managers so that, because what I don't want, or what you don't want, is people like the IC level suffering because someone's learning. Like that's a really tough spot like to be in for everyone involved. And I just never figured out how to like make that like good, you know, or bulletproof.
Probably have like a more experienced manager, third wheeling there or something. No, I'm kidding, but I don't know. Claire, you were going to say something?
Oh yeah, sorry. No, I was just gonna say, no, Cap, that's something that we hear all the time when I talk to CEOs. It's like, okay, my first time managers, because they don't have an area to practice, then they're just practicing and here's the thing right? Like it doesn't matter how many years, I've talked to CEOs who've been running their companies for 30 plus years and they still feel like they're learning something new. And so less about helping first-time managers not make mistakes and more about helping them learn from mistakes quickly. So that, I actually hate the mantra. It's not about trying to fail on purpose because that has a cost too. But what it is about opening up a line of communication with that contributor and with that direct report and that first-time manager, so that feedback loop is as quick as possible as to what's working and what's not working. And one of the, particularly for first-time managers, that means, a system of weekly one-on-ones with every single direct direct report and to sort of do that like religion. It's spending explicit time and preparing for those conversations, the questions, building the rapport, figuring out and understanding what someone's work style is. There's a lot of sort of initial trust for a first-time manager to someone to feel confident having that exchange. But I think creating that process is first and foremost the biggest thing. Is your first-time managers, the key is just figuring out how to help them mess up faster so they can learn more quickly. So that's sort of the first thing. I wanted to touch on something. Sarah, you were saying something where I was just like nodding my head a lot about the emotional around making this transition. And I think the thing that I actually have learned from other leaders the most is that the hardest part about being a manager is removing your ego. So the fact now that your definition of success now no longer includes yourself, ego is the reason why we don't like to have conflict, is because of the way it makes me feel. I feel uncomfortable. I get nervous. I'm sweaty, and I have to do extra damage control and extra work. That's about you. It's about ego. You avoid having that conversation where you might have to let someone go. You telling someone something they don't want to hear. You avoid giving that critique to maybe even your boss, because you're like, oh, I don't ego. And so the other thing too that gets in the way is your ego of wanting to be liked, right? So we don't like to bring up hard conversations. We want people to like us. So this is all stuff that trust me, I suffer from. I do this for a living, and give workshops on it. It's all hard. But I think from an emotional standpoint, removing ego is that's a transition, because again, success is not just about you. It's about the team.
Okay, now I have a question actually from the chat, and I think it goes on the other way. Now, you as a designer or as an IC, you're not the manager. How does one deal with a manager that like it's their first time, like it's first time manager, or they have like you totally see that they're not really good at that? How can you, as like the person being managed, what can you do? I don't know. Sarah, help us.
We're all just like, no, where you go? Sorry.
It's impossible.
Nothing. You cannot do anything. That's it.
No.
Like
Well,
no, but
like,
even
depends,
you,
right?
for
I think
example. Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. I think, I don't know. There's. I mean, we're all going to probably say something along a similar line. There's like you have a few options. It depends on like what the actual situation is. My therapist said something to me once about how like her entire job was to help me know myself, and that people who know themselves really well are more open to criticism and more resilient, because they just already know the stuff they're not good at, and they already know when they're going into a messy situation or something that they're not potentially like prepared for. And so if you have someone who is a first-time manager and is aware and is like, wanting to do a good job, but just doesn't know how yet, like that's a different thing. That's something where you can actually probably just talk to them. I find like a lot of the time people haven't talked to other people. This is like probably like 95% of all human problems are like just people not talking to other people, or talking to them in a way that isn't working. And so I find a lot of ICs just don't ever talk to their manager, which I actually think is like more of a senior thing. I think like the more mature you get in your career, like the more comfortable you should be talking to management when things aren't going well, or even like skipping that level. If you have a first-time manager, I guarantee you their manager wants to know like how it's going and is looking for feedback, because they're trying to coach this person into being a good manager or into being someone they can trust to run a team. I mean, then, you can kind of go down the path of like, this person is like harassing me on a daily basis. And that's a very different, like, very different set of circumstances, or like, eventually you get down the path of like, even as someone who's just incompetent and is never going to be removed because you're in a big corporate bureaucracy or whatever, like switch teams. There's a lot of options after that. But like, I find like most people just never take that first step of just saying something. And most of the time, if you're in like a healthy environment generally, like that kind of feedback is very useful and is taken very well.
Got it. So
yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the things that has been really important with groups that I've managed now and in the past is encouraging the manager, even a first-time manager, and reminding them that not only are they giving feedback, but they should be soliciting feedback all the time. So hopefully, if you're able to remove that ego, if you're learning to do that and you're asking people, please tell me when I'm not supporting you in the way that you need to be supported, to let me know those things so that I can improve. I think that's a great way to approach from the manager side. I think, yeah, it's definitely, it's tough without knowing the specific situation, but I also think, if you're lucky enough to be in a really open environment in your company where communication is encouraged, good or bad, going to that person's manager and, again, as Cap was saying, giving that feedback, and hopefully that is going to come back to that manager and they'll be able to work on those things. But yeah, it's definitely tough because I do think it does come down to exactly that. It's like so often we just don't give the feedback. We don't have the conversation and we're just holding on to this negative reaction that we've had to that manager.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty sure I was that person that never said anything about a really bad manager. And I just like resented him. And like looking back, I feel like such a jerk because I never said anything. And it was all in my power. I could have just like changed things and I could have made my life a little bit easier and probably his too. Like if I would have just said something, but no,
I've seen so many people. Yeah, I've seen so many people who just, when you finally get them to like say the thing to someone else and the person goes, most people that I've met are not supervillains. They actually want to do a good job. And so like, I've actually seen so many times when someone finally just like says to somebody, hey, this thing that you're doing kind of bothers me, doesn't feel very good. Like this is how I would like to do it instead. Like most people, at least like in companies I've worked in, again, total survivor bias, but are like, oh, I had no idea. Like I had no idea. I thought it was cool. Like I thought we were good and like just did not know.
Exactly.
And most people want to change.
Right. It's the studies that have been done around people's receptiveness to negative feedback. Business Review did the study back in 2013, I want to say, where they found that the degree to which people fear negative feedback on one level, let's say, but people's desire to hear that negative feedback is more than 2 times that degree of magnitude. So the point being is, for much as we don't like to give that negative feedback, the other person wants to hear it 2 times as much as how much you don't want to say it. Meaning, and here's the most hilarious thing, Pablo, I was laughing when you were saying, I've been that person who didn't tell my boss that they could have been a better boss. I have been that person. It's the reason I became the CEO of Know Your Company. I've been doing this for 6 years. This is, it's something I've faced firsthand, 7 years ago as an employee. And so I totally relate to the person who asked that question. I agree also with Cap and Sarah about, okay, the answer is you should just say something, which, the person who asked the question is like, okay, yes, thank you. The biggest question is, well, how? And this is the question we all wrestle with, is how do you tell someone that they could be a better manager when they could also fire you or tell their manager or who knows what, right? So the framework that we recommend is around 4 different pieces around giving difficult feedback. It's to come from a place of care. So to say what your intention is when you give the feedback. And when you're giving upward feedback, that's the most important thing. The second is deprivation. So to be extremely objective as much as you can about what exactly you feel like could be different. Observable traits and behaviors, not, oh, this made me like you didn't care about this particular line in this email and it made, and this is how it came across. So observation is the second piece. Fallibility. So to admit that this is just my opinion, you probably are not like this with all your 8 other direct reports. You were probably actually really busy that day. Come from me and show that your opinion is not the word of God. And then the last is curiosity. So at the end of giving this feedback, to ask a question. and to say, that was my point, and what can I be doing for you? Or my favorite question actually to ask is just, what do you think, right? What do you think at the end? Like, what do you, that pieces me again, care, observation, fallibility, and curiosity. And the most important, again, being care. So for ask a question, could be as simple as scheduling time, right, with the person and saying, hey, I'd love to have a conversation about working relationship. I want to give I want to get feedback on how I can be better as a direct report. And if you're open, I'd love to share some things I've been thinking about too. Permission, frame the conversation, and then when you have it, again, care, observation, fallibility, curiosity.
I feel like
Yeah, I
that's
think there's like a whole there's a whole thing to be said about how I think a lot of when I was in IC, I felt this way actually, was that like it wasn't a two-way relationship that I was responsible for. And I find a lot of ICs do this where like my manager sucks and that's the end of it. Like that's just the end of the conversation. And I have no accountability here. I have no input into this process. I can't make it better. Like it's just bad. And I think that's kind of crazy. I guess it's like it's a relationship. There's two different people involved. Like it's a two-way street. Like everyone assuming the best intent of each other is really important. I just don't think ICs do that very much. And then I have a really weird aside, which is, so Claire was saying that like it's hard to say something to someone who could fire you and like, or who controls your performance review or could not promote you or whatever. Like it doesn't have to be firing, right? And it's tough. Like it's tough for everybody. That power dynamic never goes away in any scenario, not even just a hard conversation. Like just any kind of feedback about a product even or a design decision, like all these things are kind of loaded. So Etsy did this weird thing. The engineering team did this. This is like a weird experiment they did where they tried to figure out what superpowers senior IC should have that managers don't have. And like tried to create a situation where like, I think one of the ones was like, if you were a senior or above engineer, you could quit a project anytime. Like you could just be in the middle of a project and be like, I don't believe in this project. I don't think I should be doing it. And you could just stop and like go work on something else with no repercussion. Like that was one of the superpowers, and they experimented with a few of them. And I thought that was so fascinating. And like, I don't know that that's how it is anymore, but I've always been really curious about like, how could you create like an environment where ICs also have some sort of power that is not the same as the managers, you know, like that it's like they have their own set of authority. I haven't gotten too deep into this, but it's just a weird idea.
That is really cool. That reminded me of a board game that I've been playing with my roommate, where it's like a character building game and with cards, and then you could just like suddenly like, I have this superpower, and then you just do something like crazy. So yeah, we should have those kind of things that work too. Suddenly just like bring a magic card and it's like be a total nerd, but we need that. We need that. That should be part of Practical Works, Cap. Okay, so let's. I have one more question from the crowd, and this is regarding building, like working with a team. I'm going to mix it up with one question that I had and one question from the people that are watching, and then it's just like how do you build a team, and once you have a team, how do you keep them motivated, and how do you keep them productive? How do you this is a giant question, I know, but it's just like it could go anywhere. But at the end of the day, it's just like working with a team, and like how do you build that team, and how do you just like keep them moving forward?
Ping pong tables, right? Don't we all agree it's just ping pong tables? That's what tech has agreed is the one motivating factor for all teams, I think.
I agree. That's it. Let's move on.
Something like that. Sarah, go for it.
Yeah, so that's I would love a ping pong table. Doesn't work for remote teams, unfortunately.
VR headsets.
Great. I guess we could virtual ping pong. No, I think, and this really goes to management as well. So much of it is as you're building a team is really getting to know the people, not just in the way that they're going to contribute. This is a designer, this is a developer, but as people, and getting to know what their lives are like outside of work and what are they into, and encouraging people to share those sides of themselves. I think that really helps as you're building that team and getting to know each other. Finding opportunities for people to do things together that are not work related has been really helpful for me, especially when times get tougher and emotions can come out and you're trying to get work done. If you know those people a lot better, it's much greater chance you're going to get through it much easier with that group. And so I think for me, I lean really heavily on the culture that you're building in your company and within those teams is find ways to foster that and make work something that people aren't just doing because they have to, but because they want to, and that motivation can come in a lot of different ways. We do a bunch of different things at Dribbble to keep people happy and motivated and having a good time. And most of those things, whatever we've done, whether it's been playing board games together when we meet up a couple of times a year, to having remote book clubs and sharing our thoughts about books, or playing D&D in a Zoom call with a group, we're getting to know each other and forming relationships that are a lot closer than just the work that we do. And that's been the key in all my teams. And I think it's the thing that I actually enjoy most as a manager, and encourage people who are first-time managers as well, is to spend time with all of your reports and really get to know them as people, because we all respond to things that happen at work and in our lives differently. And when you can tap into those things as a manager, it's much easier to have those difficult conversations. It's much easier to keep someone motivated when you've learned what motivates them. So just, get to know people.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes it's really important to get to know, to have that deeper connection with people, which sometimes it can be frowned upon in companies, whereas hey, we don't mix or outside life with work, that's my personal stuff, and this here is work, and sometimes that you are at work and that kind of culture exists. But what I have experienced is that once you do build that kind of relationship, then you realize, like you're saying, what the other person, what they value, and also what other problems they might be going through. And sometimes that actually affects your perception of different things, or how they behave at work. If they're showing up late, for example, you're like, oh, this person is just late. But if you actually know that person is being late because, well, they actually just had a baby, or something is happening at home, is that they're going through a very personal thing that is actually affecting their life, then you build that empathy and you understand why they're being late, and you're not judging them without knowing. So that's actually those things that personal life affect your life, your work life too. And so I think it's I don't know what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say is that it's important to have those, and I agree with you, Sarah.
Totally. Sarah, it's actually back data. So there's an Edelman study they did in 2016 where they found, 1 in 3 people don't trust their employers, right? 33,000 people. They sort of employees don't trust their employer. And the guy who wrote the study and issued the study, his number one recommendation to build that trust and to sort of build better rapport in the team was to just make sure people get to know. So to share what your personal leadership journey has been, your leadership philosophy, the people you admire, the things you're struggling with, if you spend your time outside of work, the social causes that you're a part of. That was his number one recommendation. So I found that fascinating. I think also find fascinating this concept of team building and trust. It's actually something lately I've been doing a ton of research on. I'm actually just about to publish a guide on building trust this week. Fingers crossed, it's almost done. And we surveyed a couple hundred employees, and what we found there of what is the most effective way to build rapport and trust in a team? 3 things. So one is to admit your vulnerabilities as a leader. Talk about what you're bad at, right? So to communicate your intentions as a leader. Just explain why you're making decisions, why you're choosing to take action. And then the third is simply following through on your commitments.
Yeah.
That was it. Just actually doing what you're going to say, what you're going to do. And I think what's really interesting about those 3 is none of them actually have anything to do with money. None of them have actually anything to do with that. None of them actually take a lot of time. None of them means you need to like plan a fancy company retreat or hire some consultant to do like a fancy team building exercise, even though all those things I'm sure are maybe other things, but in terms of actually team building, it's as simple as admitting your vulnerabilities, saying what you're going to do, and communicating your intentions. So I found that fascinating. And then the last thing I was going to mention was, Pablo, you asked this question of how do you actually affect, which is obviously a big question, right? Like, how do you actually make sure your team performs well? And what studies have found, or the most recent study that I find personally, it's the one that I really appreciate, is that they found that the number one source of motivation for employee review just a couple years ago as well was making meaningful progress every day. That's what motivates people. That's what motivates them, is just to make meaningful progress every single day. And the reason is because when you think about why people go to work is progress. It's to actually get something done that matters. So if I have a day where I feel like I'm not making progress, there's a client that's really mad at me, I'm being blocked on something, the work's not that interesting, I'm not going to care. And there's no amount of feel-good team activities that are going to change that if I'm not making meaningful progress every day. So what this means as a manager is that your focus should be thinking about, how do I help this person make meaningful progress? How do I make it really clear what the goals and the vision is? How do I make it how they can communicate with me so that they make so that there's an open channel for how this progress can get done? But I think, contrary to popular literature out there around employee engagement, where it's about feeling good and employees being happy, I'm all about that. Like, if you look at my Twitter bio, like, is to help people be happier at work. Trust me, I think happiness is the meaning of life. However, happiness only comes with actually making progress. It only comes and getting to do something that is making a difference. And we seem to forget that. So remember that your role as a manager is to help that team and help that person.
Yeah, and I feel I totally agree with you, Claire, because sometimes I will go, like, I will go home. Well, I'm actually, I work from home, so it's like I have to make the mental shift where it's like I'm not at work anymore, I'm at home. But once I do that, I feel like, oh, dude, what I do all day? I feel like I didn't do anything. It was in meetings and stuff. I think it's but you were actually making progress. You were making progress talking to people. Even like I was probably making progress with being in those meetings. They had some progress. So sometimes it's actually, I suppose, you are making progress. You just have to acknowledge what the progress was, like, or sometimes just like have a check mark that is like, I had that meeting that was important, or that thing that I had that talk that was important, and then celebrate those things, or measure those things where that stuff was actually progress. Probably, I don't know if it's meaningful progress, as you're saying, but at least, like, you don't go. You don't end your day that way, and probably as a manager, your part of your job is just like acknowledging, hey, that what you did, that was progress, that was important, and we're going in the right direction, I guess.
Absolutely. I think the way that I've always looked at that is that, as a manager, all of those meetings, you might sit down at the end of the day and be like, wow, I spoke for 8 hours today, like, that's what I did. But the measurement of that, the real value is coming is in the progress that your team is now making, or that report. And if they're succeeding, at their tasks or in their projects, then that's your progress. And being able to look at those victories that your team is celebrating together, that's like, for me, that has been the key. And that's what has made management so much fun, is learning to celebrate the victories of the people that you work with.
Okay, we're running out of time. This is supposed to end at 8. We might be able to squeeze in a couple of minutes there. I wanted to talk about, we can just go over this really quickly, but I just wanted to do this, Cap. And this was, you wrote 4 years ago, you wrote an article. And 4 years ago, by the way, 4 years ago, let me just paint you this picture. At least for me, there was not a lot of information. And I'm actually talking like, 4 years and a half ago or something. There was not a lot of information about like what a product designer was, what it meant to be one, how to be one. All of this information. There were some blogs and Medium posts that will talk about those things. So you would take those as the Bible, like these people that are leaders, they are saying this, so that should be it. Because if you are someone that is just starting and is just looking for light at the end of the tunnel, then you take that as your manifesto, and you wrote an actual article that I still remember, and I still take it as like, hey, that's it. And probably you won't remember this, but you wrote about being a boring designer, that you should try to be a boring designer. And it's I would like to know if your number one, if your stance still stands. Like, do you still think that we should try to be boring? And if you could explain a little bit about that, if you can. I know we're at 8, just like a brief. You do remember, right?
So without having all my own context, I think I still believe that probably more than I ever have. Like, so when I hear that I did say that, I can remember writing it, and I remember, it being a thing that was controversial at the time. Design Twitter kind of that was starting to exist, and then it, so that did a thing with that blog post. Like, I feel like a lot of designers get stuck in the craft of the thing that we're making. And I actually feel like that's actually, like, in tech, that's actually caused a ton of problems. Like, we can look across, like sure, like Facebook design is amazing, has amazing visual designers, amazing motion designers, but like, and amazing engineers who are very craft oriented, like extremely good at their craft. But like, no one was boring enough to ask, like, is this like, what's the consequence of this thing? Or like, what is going to happen if we implement this? And that's a very macro example, but like, this happens all the time, where designers aren't goal oriented, don't understand metrics, don't understand how to break a project down. That's why you get these like massive redesigns that like tank metrics for products. And that's why you get like companies shipping stuff without knowing like the true impact. And you have design teams that just push out entire style guides without knowing how they perform. And I just think like having someone who, like, these are the design teams I built. So again, very much like my own personal, very strong bias, like showing here. But like the designers I find the most successful are the ones who like their craft is secondary to the impact. And like that actually bothers designers. Like it's like a designer thing. Like it like there are people that bothers really bad. And when you ask them like, yeah, great, but like what's gonna happen when no one knows that that's a button that they can click on? Like, and they're like, but it looks great. And you're like, yeah, sure. but no one's gonna click it. Like that's a thing that if you can like kind of get past the thing that like design isn't your craft. Like I think people forget the word product and product design, and we should add product to engineering and have product engineering and product management. Like we all kind of like forget that is the outcome. Like the product and the people using it is the thing that matters the most. And it's not design, it's not engineering, it's not product management. It's like the confluence of those three things that creates the thing in the end. And that's my like I think engineering gets too deep on stuff. Like engineers go deep on things they think are fun and interesting and not actually that useful for people. And I think product management does the same. And I think it's just a problem we have in our industry. And I want more boring people just to be like fuddy-duddies about it. And,
yeah.
and, I feel like we'd be a lot better off overall.
After I read your article, I've been trying to be as boring as possible. And,
Which is good. Congratulations.
I have to be fun out of work on the side projects. That's what I try to do. Okay, we're out of time, so I just want to debrief. And again, thank you so much for being here. This is amazing. Just like everyone here is also everyone that is watching. We had like around like 50 people watching. Like, I just want you to tell us a little bit about sharing what you're doing currently, if a project that you're working on, where can people find you, like on Twitter, on the Instagrams, on the Snapchats, I don't know what it is. And just like tell us about that project that you're working on too. Want to start, Sarah?
Sure. I have a bunch of projects that I'm working on, as always. But I would say you are super duper everywhere on the internet, Twitter, Instagram, most importantly, Dribbble. You can follow up with my illustrations there. One thing I did want to note, project aside, is that Dribbble is hiring. So if you're an engineer or a product manager, I want to talk to you. So please reach out to me and yeah, come work with us.
Great. There you go. It sounds like a really fun place to work at, I have to say.
I am biased about this, but it is very, very fun.
What about you, Claire? No?
So you faded out there, Pablo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, Claire, if you could share something about your project, about everything you're doing, where people can follow you.
Totally. Yes, absolutely. So the big thing that we are actually working on, that I actually haven't really announced this yet, I was going to announce it on Twitter tomorrow, is we're working on actually building a brand new product just for managers to help them become better, believe it or not. So a lot of what we talked about today, we have created, a methodology based off of 4 years of research, the workshops that we've done, all the writing that we've done, and we're going to launch it in a few months. So if you're interested in being the first to know about that, I'm going to put a link out on Twitter so you can get alerted. Probably do that tomorrow sometime. In the meantime, follow me on Twitter. It's Claire J. Lew, so ClaireJLew. And then I do a ton of writing on Medium. So I'll also, hopefully, fingers crossed, be publishing a brand new guide on building guides on meetings with one-on-ones. And I've written hundreds of posts on everything from how to give feedback to your manager, to what actually motivates a team, to how do you actually create a vision for your team, all that good stuff. Find me on Medium, find me, Twitter's the place to go. And of course, check us out at knowyourcompany.com.
I have to say, I've been reading all your articles. They have been super useful, especially the one-on-ones. I'd be like, perfect. I've been applying this stuff.
Thank you.
I've been applying it with my manager and with the person that I'm managing. And it's been awesome. Like, well, later I'll have to come back at you and actually tell you, like, if it was. For now, it's great. What about you, Cap?
Oh my, that is like music to my ears so much. I'm gonna like rewatch that on YouTube later and just like feel really good about that. Thank you.
Let's see. So I'm just Cap on Twitter and on Instagram. If you like dog pics, that's my entire Instagram basically. And yeah, so I left BuzzFeed a couple months ago and started a consultancy to do management and leadership coaching, and in particular focusing on first-time managers or first-time managers managing managers. So I like those first kind of couple layers of management are people that I really want to try to like help. I feel like I've always heard that executive coaching is a thing, and it's really confusing to me because those are the people that kind of made it. And yeah, I agree they need help, but like the people that probably need the most help and are the least served are like the people who are like starting out for the first time, or doing these really new things to them that have, like, again, carry a lot of risk and a lot of uncertainty. And so, yeah, so I started, it's practicalworks.co. I've tried to price it so that people can like actually afford it, or that so companies let you expense it. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. It's just fancy one-on-ones for people who are unsure about management.
Teams and individuals, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Teams and individuals.
Yeah. So I also work with teams. Yeah. Yeah. So if you want to know how to recruit, if you want to know how to like, fix your organization, I've done a lot of that. Like if you feel like your team's in trouble or having a hard time collaborating, like these are things that I am helping people with right now. So.
Okay, well, thank you so much again. Thank you so much for being here, for answering all those questions. Like I've been taking notes of everything. I'm gonna rewatch this just to, as a first time manager, I need to learn a lot. So thank you for sharing all of that. I selfishly put this just for me. Kidding. Well. Thank you, everyone, also for being here, and thank you again for being just a little bit 10 minutes more. We usually end that, but it's just like so interesting to hear you guys. So that's it, everyone. Bye. We do this every Sunday. So next Sunday, it's gonna be a surprise. So just keep tuned on Twitter, like on my Twitter, because I haven't done a Twitter for this thing. There's just no time for social medias. But on Twitter, just like twitter.com/Pablo Stanley. And I usually post just like new episodes. And okay, well, bye-bye. Thank you so much.